I wake up each morning holding a question I didn't choose, a question that seems to choose me instead. Why do I act the way I do? It sits on my chest like a quiet paradox. I want control, yet most of my movements happen before thought even arrives. I call it laziness, distraction, or lack of focus, but the truth feels stranger. My instincts make the first move, and I simply follow. Every day becomes a small battlefield of motivation, dopamine, attention, and habit loops that fire faster than I can reason. I learn, but I forget. I plan, but I drift. And somewhere between these contradictions, I sense something ancient in me, something Nietzsche would call the pulse of instinct, rising before I can name it. Still, another voice waits in the margins of my mind, softer, deliberate, almost scientific. William James reminds me that action can shape me even when I feel hollow. Act as if, he whispers, and the brain slowly rewires. But how do I reconcile these two visions? One says I'm moved by forces older than my vocabulary. The other insists I can sculpt myself with small choices. So I find myself standing in the doorway between impulse and intention, unsure which side of me is real. Maybe both, maybe neither. I think about the tiny decisions that form my day, the reach for my phone, the coffee I drink half awake, the message I delay answering because avoidance feels easier than clarity. They look trivial, but each one is a vote cast by instinct or by intention, a vote I rarely recognize as mine. And that's the part no philosopher warned me about, the heaviness of these microscopic turning points. The quiet weight of choosing who I will become, not in grand moments but in the unnoticed ones. And so I ask myself again, what if the smallest choice is the truest mirror of who I am? I don't know the answer yet. I only feel the tension, widening like a path I must learn to walk with my eyes open. If this reflection speaks to something inside you, stay close. If it touched you, subscribe and leave a comment. We walk this path together. I used to think my choices were light, almost weightless, but lately they crash against me the moment I wake. It starts before sunrise, in that fragile space where my mind is slow, but my body is already moving, reaching for the phone, scrolling without thought, surrendering to impulses that feel older than my name. I tell myself I'm in control, yet the truth slips out in quiet moments. Half my life unfolds without my permission. There's a strange violence in that realization, a shiver that runs through me when I notice how automatic I've become. I feel like a passenger inside my own routines, watching instinct tug the steering wheel before intention has even opened its eyes. And the world rewards this sleepwalking. Apps whisper for attention, dopamine flickers like a lure, and every small distraction promises ease. I fall into these patterns as if gravity pulls me toward them. But beneath that gravity, something more unsettling stirs. The suspicion that my daily choices reveal what I truly am, not what I claim to be. I see it in the smallest moments. The hesitation before starting a task that matters. The quick escape into notifications. The quiet refusal to face discomfort. These aren't just habits. They're fragments of my internal architecture, laid bare by repetition. Nietzsche would say my instincts are showing their teeth here, shaping me long before I choose a direction. And I feel that. A primitive momentum, a force moving underneath language. It scares me how natural it feels to obey it, how easily I call it just the way I am, as if that absolves me from noticing the pattern. But I can't unsee it now. Every trivial action glows with consequence. The choice to delay, the choice to react, the choice to indulge a fleeting impulse. They gather, stacking into something heavy, something that shapes the texture of my days. It's as if each tiny decision is a vote cast for a future version of myself, one I'm either building or betraying. And I realize I've been treating these decisions like dust, barely worth noticing, when in truth they are the quiet architects of my life. So I stand inside this invisible war, instinct on one side, intention on the other, feeling the tension coil inside me. And for the first time, I stop pretending the battle is small. It isn't. It never was. Nietzsche's presence arrives not as a voice, but as a pressure inside my ribs, a kind of ancient gravity pushing upward from the core of me. It's in the way my pulse shifts before a choice, the way desire sparks faster than thought, the way I feel pulled toward certain actions without understanding why. I used to imagine myself as a rational creature, someone who selects goals and then marches toward them with intention. But when I look closely, brutally honestly, I see something else. Instinct writes the first draft of every decision I make. I only revise it afterward and call that revision choice. This realization hits me with a strange violence, as if I've stumbled onto a truth too naked for comfort. I am not the clean, deliberate author of my actions. I am a field of impulses, inherited tensions, unconscious drives rising like storms beneath the surface. It shows itself in flashes, the quick irritation before I can soften it, the sudden craving, the reflex to withdraw, the urge to dominate, the desire to be seen, the hunger for approval. They flood through me without permission, and I dress them in polite explanations later. Nietzsche would smirk at that. He'd say I've been living under the illusion that the mind is in charge, when really it's the bookkeeper of deeper forces. And I feel that truth burn in my chest. My instincts move like currents, powerful, ancient, indifferent to my temporary plans. They shape my impulses toward work or avoidance, confrontation or retreat, creation or destruction. They sculpt the tone of my day before I even step into it. The more I observe this, the more I notice how often I pretend not to notice. I call these instincts moods, energy levels, motivation, as if they were small mechanical errors instead of the true engines underneath my behavior. But in quiet moments, when I strip away excuses, I feel the rawness of it, the animal in me choosing before the human can speak. And in that rawness, something paradoxical happens. I feel both terrified and strangely alive. Terrified because it means I'm not as orderly as I claim to be. Alive because it means there is something powerful inside me, something untouched by hesitation or fear of judgment. This is where the fracture widens. My rational self wants control, but these instinctive forces surge ahead like wildfire, uncontainable and unapologetic. And as I stand inside this tension, I realize that understanding my instincts isn't enough. I have to face them. I have to decide what to do with the fire that moves before I think. William James enters not as a challenge to this fire, but as a counterweight, a quiet, deliberate insistence that I am not condemned to the first impulse that rises in me. His presence feels like a hand on my shoulder, not soft, but steady enough to keep me from collapsing into fatalism. He reminds me that even if instinct strikes first, action decides who I become. That every choice I enact, no matter how small or mechanical, carves a new path in the brain. That habit is not merely repetition, it is self-creation through consistency. And this truth unsettles me in a different way. If Nietzsche reveals the storms inside me, James exposes the responsibility I hold in spite of them. I think of a moment from just yesterday. I was slumped at my desk, drained, drifting, convinced I needed motivation before I could work. But James would laugh at that, gently, almost kindly, because he knew that action precedes feeling, not the other way around. So I forced myself to type a single sentence. One sentence. It wasn't profound. It wasn't even good. But something shifted. The act of beginning, even badly, stirred a faint momentum. My mind, which had felt like a heavy fog, started to thin. The work didn't become easy, but it became possible. And James was right. I didn't wait for motivation. I created the conditions for it. There's a humility in this philosophy, but also a quiet defiance. It refuses to romanticize instinct or surrender to it. It whispers that I have the power to steer myself with small, repeated actions, even when the internal weather is turbulent. And yet, This power is both liberating and exhausting. Because it means I can no longer hide behind "I didn't feel like it" or "I wasn't in the right mood." Feeling is not the master. Behavior is. I act, therefore I become. In the tension between Nietzsche's raw instinct and James's disciplined action, I sense a strange harmony trying to form. Instinct gives the spark, the ignition, the heat that pushes me toward life. Action gives the shape, the direction, the slow carving of identity. One is wildfire, the other is the hand guiding the flame. Together they create something dangerous and beautiful, a self that is both inherited and chosen. And now I stand between these forces, aware that neither alone can carry me. Instinct without action is chaos. Action without instinct is hollow. I need both, and the realization leaves me trembling with possibility. I picture myself as a sculptor standing before a block of stone I didn't choose. This stone is my instinct, dense, ancient, full of wild textures and fractures running deeper than memory. I feel its weight every morning when I wake, every time a reflex fires before intention, every time desire moves faster than discipline. For most of my life, I've treated this stone as fate, something fixed, something already determined. But now, as I face it fully, I understand what I've been avoiding. The stone is given, yes, but what I carve from it is not. And this is where the tension between Nietzsche and James becomes a kind of sacred friction. One reminds me that the stone is alive with ancestral force. The other reminds me that my hands are not bound. The metaphor grows sharper the more I sit with it. I see how my instincts pulse like veins of fire running through the rock. Unpredictable, sometimes beautiful, sometimes destructive. Nietzsche would tell me to honor that fire, to stop resenting the intensity inside me. James would tell me to shape it with steady action, to carve the edges through repetition, to train the direction of my days. As these ideas collide inside me, I feel something loosening, the belief that I must choose between being ruled by impulse or suffocated by discipline. There is a third way, to become the sculptor who listens to the stone but still decides where the chisel falls. I start noticing the 4 techniques emerging from this realization. First is attentive instinct, the willingness to feel my impulses without flinching or denying them. Second is small, deliberate action, the Jamesian truth that one intentional movement can redirect an entire hour. Third is constructive friction, accepting that tension is not a flaw but a necessary grinding that shapes me. And finally, the daily chisel, the practice of carving identity through repetition, not inspiration. These techniques feel less like rules and more like tools, ones I can reach for even on the days when I feel unstable or unsure. Somewhere in this process, an emotional climax rises. I feel a trembling clarity. I don't need to banish the chaos inside me. I need to work with it. My instincts are not enemies, they're raw material. My actions are not punishments, they're choices that sculpt the material into form. And in this convergence, I reclaim a kind of agency I didn't know I had, the power to shape the force that shapes me. As the day quiets around me, I sense a gentle ending forming, not a conclusion, but an opening. I walk into the evening with the strange peace of someone who knows the work will never be finished, but who finally understands why it matters. If this journey resonated with you, stay close. Your presence here means something to me. If you feel called, subscribe, leave a comment, or share your reflection. It helps us keep shaping this path together.